Mike, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine. It's good to see you this afternoon.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And as you know, we're doing our leadership series, interviewing a lot of executives. And another interesting video we'll be coming out with shortly is we interviewed a lot of elementary school kids too and asked them a lot of the same questions. So it's sort of like, are you smarter than a 50 or 5 year, whatever that show was, 50-year grader or whatever?
Well,
So
there's a book out. Everything I learned in life, I learned in kindergarten. So it'll be interesting to see if that works.
yes, a lot of it is true, believe me. So we'll hit it right here. This is about leadership, and I want to learn more about you and your perspective. So let's start with first, give our audience your name, what you do, who you are.
Well, my name's Mike Stark. I'm the president and COO of a company called HomeDeliveryLink. HomeDeliveryLink is a nationwide home delivery service. We provide white glove service for the delivery of furniture and appliances nationwide for companies like Restoration Hardware and Lazy Boy and Sears, etc.
Awesome. And I do know you had we'll get into it in a little bit, you had a previous life at Vaughn's, did you not?
I did.
And I
I
saw
did.
that great, take a few seconds to talk about that great photography book that you put together.
We did. In fact, we had a book signing this Monday night at Vaughn's. About 600 people showed up, and so it's really taken hold. It's really preserved the legacy of a great company, and everybody's very happy with it. So I'm proud.
Yeah, you should be. I thought it was outstanding. It's great work. So, congrats on that. So, you've seen different aspects, different situations over your experience about leadership. What is your perspective? What is your definition of leadership?
I think a great leader is able to inspire people to do better things and not be so risk adverse. Because if everybody's risk adverse, no one's moving forward. And I think a great leader is able to provide influence. If you're able to inspire people to do great things and think of other ways of doing things, so it's kind of a continuous improvement cycle, then you're able to inspire them and influence them to do even greater things. Um, I've worked for some great visionary leaders who were very inspirational and could provide me with influence, and that's where I think I learned a lot of my stuff.
Do you find you had there was different types of leadership in the businesses and companies you've worked with and for?
Oh, absolutely. Going back, you mentioned Vaughn's. My days at Vaughn's, I had some very visionary leaders, guys like Jerry Fahey and Ken Olson and Larry Del Sano, guys that were presidents of the company back then, but were very approachable. And when they came in the room, you knew they were the president, but they talked to you like they were your friends, and we trusted them. And at that time, Vaughn's was number one in its marketplace. We became the number one food sponsor of the Olympics, and it took everybody on the whole team to make that happen, and we did. We were all very excited about that.
It's interesting because I was just talking to another individual, and I remember we were talking about sports. I remember Miami Dolphins. I remember fans complaining that the coach at one time was too emotional, so they switched coaches to another coach, and that coach was not emotional enough.
Yeah. Well, look at Lou Holtz, and he has done some incredible things, and he builds trust in his teams. And if you ever saw the series that he used to put together back in the 80s and the 90s, it was in fact he did one video that was so moving that I used that for years in my training. It's 20 years old now, and the message is still very powerful.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, you mentioned some people. We've all had influencers in our life, whether it's I had a grade 7 teacher that was an amazing influence among coaches and other people. Has there been, one or two people that have influenced your career and your life overall?
Oh, sure. I mentioned Jerry Fahey, and I'll give you an example. In about '83, I was the labor guy for Vaughn's. I did all the labor negotiations for Vaughn's. And Jerry and I were at a conference. He was the president at the time, and we were at a conference in Florida. I mean, in San Diego. And we were running on the beach one morning, and he stopped and he says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like 32, 33 years old. And I turned to him, and I was kind of prepared for that question. I said, "I want your job." And he smiled and he said, "I knew you were going to say that." He says, "You can't get there from here." And I said, "Yeah, I figured that. So I need an opportunity to get back in the business of the business." We weren't a labor company. We were a retail food company. And he says, "I'll make that happen." And he did. And he gave me an opportunity to go back into store operations management. And he had enough trust in me that I would do the best I could. I had enough trust in him that if I struggled with that, I was doing a good enough job in labor that he wouldn't let me just, fall off the bench. and it worked out well for me. I trusted him, he trusted me, and my career continued and grew with Vons. Olson did the same thing. Del Sano did the same thing. There have been some very inspiring people I've worked for.
Well, you mentioned a key word that's thrown around a lot, and we talk to a lot of our clients about it when they ask us, well, how do I assess if this person truly is a good leader before they hire them? And the word that always comes up is trust. But as you know, and from what you've said, trust evolves. It doesn't just happen, and it's
Correct.
very hard to do, which that then presents good leaders that are able to do it. How did he develop the trust in you and him to make that happen?
Well, we had enough interrelationships, professional relationships, that we spent time together. When you're the labor guy, you're constantly talking to the president of the company to, make sure how much money we can spend, and especially in big contract negotiations, we had 30,000 union employees. So you get to know the guy, and when you do something wrong, he wasn't pounding on you. He was talking about, how do you fix that? What do you do about it? And so you knew that if you stumbled, and you stumble in your career, everybody does that, you have enough trust in your leader that they're going to make you learn from that as an experience and move on, as opposed to just keep pounding you down because of it. And that's how I build my teams. It's all around trust.
Hey, the players will do anything for the coach that stands behind them, right?
Correct.
Absolutely. With respect to that, I think this is probably the right time to ask this question. And again, I compare a lot of things to sports because I think they're very close related to business. How do you feel one develops a winning culture in any type of organization?
Just back to that word trust. You've got to go in and build trust within your team. It's interesting. When I go into an organization, I don't bring all my friends with me. I go in and assess what's going on there, and I tell them up front, I want to earn your trust, I want to earn your respect, but at the same time, I'm going to have to earn that about you too. And so we work together, and it's getting in there and building that trust. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a little bit of time. You try to align the team. You talk about common values and where we're going and how we're going to get there together. And then remind them that we all have roles and responsibilities. It's like a team. There's only one first baseman. There's only one second baseman. So I expect the guy in first to play first, right, and the guy in second to play second. And if for some reason that first baseman's having a problem, he's got a high pop ball down the right field line and he's running for it, I expect the pitcher and the second baseman to run over there to help him out, because that's what happens when you have a team that plays and trains well together and they play well together. And the same thing applies to my organization. If somebody's got a big project, I expect everybody to kind of stand by and help them or her whenever that is needed.
That was politically correct, that comment. Good job. They say a lot of times the CEO or the president is probably one of the loneliest persons out there, because who do you talk to? Who do you go to for advice?
Well, as I mentioned, I've had some really good mentors, but I've also, when I trust my team, I go to them for advice. I'm not shy about that. When I go in, I don't know all the answers. I figure that when there's 4 or 5 of us in the room collaborating on something, the brain power is pretty strong. And so if we're about to take on something that I am not 100% certain of, I'll bring the team together, or a couple of members of the team say, hey, we got a problem, I got an issue. Let's talk about how we do this. And I don't do that day one. I do that when I've got trust, because I know they're as engaged in winning that game as I am. And so together, there's a lot of brain power in that room to help solve those kind of problems. And if I really got in a jam, there's a few friends I can go to. I've got a couple of legal guys that I trust that I would call up if I had something very complicated, a business transaction or something. But typically the stuff we're dealing with are customer solutions, and I bring the team in for those.
Well, there's nothing like developing trust by asking the advice of people on your team, because what more could be presented than you trust them to give you the right answer.
Correct.
So that's awesome. Is there, you've heard this question before, is there anything that keeps you up at night?
I guess it's when I don't know what I don't know. And what I mean by that is, what am I missing? If we're about to do a big transaction or start something up new, what am I missing here? What don't I know about this? I mean, when you know what you know, it's pretty easy to figure it out. When you know you're missing something, you can go figure it out. But when you don't know what you're missing, that would keep me awake at night. And it doesn't happen very often, But typically, if I'm going to go into a transaction or we're buying a company, what have I missed in diligence? What's going to surprise me tomorrow morning after I sign the documents and go, oh, what the hell? What did I miss? And that's what happens. And thank goodness I don't lose a lot of sleep at nighttime, so things must be running fairly well right now.
Good for you. You've told me, and we've talked a couple of things like the legacy of Vaughn's and the photographic legacy, if you will, that you put together for that, but and some other things you've mentioned. So I kind of know, but you tell our audience, how do you make a difference out there? I know you're doing something for July 4th, for example. How do you make a difference out there?
Well, within my team, I like to create energy and motivation. I've been with this organization now just since May, and I've been out traveling, hitting all the field locations, and we've got 60 of them. And I've been out to probably 20 just in the last month and a half. And when I get out there, I meet with the managers because they don't know me. So I'm, again, trying to establish that trust and get to know them so I can trust them because I'm not there every day. And then I go out and I want to meet our delivery teams and kind of motivate them. Why are we here? Remind them what's the most important thing we do for our customers. And just kind of, it's an easy 5 or 6 minute discussion. They're busy people. They don't want to spend an hour on the dock with me in the morning. But if I buy them a cup of coffee and bring some donuts in, they'll listen to me for 10 or 15 minutes. And it's all about motivating them to take care of our customers. Because if you take care of your customer, they'll take care of you. And I remind them of that. And the more our customers take care of us, that means more product they're buying, the more deliveries they get, the more money they get. It's just a circle, just continuous improvement circle. And I remind them of that. And it gets them pretty excited.
So are you the next person on Undercover Boss?
I don't know about that. They all know me now, or they're getting to know me now. Let's put it that way. That's an interesting concept. I like that show to see the surprises. It's also interesting to see the smart people who say there's more to this guy than meets the eye. You sense that.
Well, I also find it interesting that a lot of them say, "I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that," and you're thinking, "How?"
I know.
But one point you brought up, I have a client who every year, it's in the food business also, every year takes all the people at corporate headquarters out, not necessarily for a retreat, but out to somewhere where they basically redefine that they're in the food business, not in the corporate accounting, corporate IT, corporate marketing business. Because you go into that office every day, you can quickly forget what you actually are doing.
Understanding the business of the business is critical. That's why when I said to Fahey that time, I like your job, he says, you can't get here from here. I knew I had to get back into the business of the business. I had to get back on the retail side in order to move my way up the organization. And he knew it, and we quickly agreed that that's what I was going to do. So that, I understand that.
Well, good leadership in asking right there. Couple of easier questions, light on the light side here. Has there ever been a leader, past or present, that you've admired? So, again, typical question you'd love to have dinner with?
Well, it's too late now, but and you've probably heard this one before. I liked Ronald Reagan a lot. He inspired confidence. He was one of those guys that when he sat there on TV and told us what was going on, you said, I'm glad he's at the helm of this ship right now. He inspired people. He motivated people. If you look back in John Kennedy, the same thing, when he would say, he'd just look at the population of the world or of the country and say, what are you going to do for us? Not what are we going to do for you? I think those were inspiring leaders who motivated people to get up and do something. And we don't see a lot of that today, unfortunately.
Yes, I know. Even lighter side now to complete. Do you have a favorite sport?
I love to backpack and fish in the Eastern Sierras. That's my tabernacle. If I can get up there and backpack for 3 or 4 days and catch a few fish and just relax, I love doing that with a couple of friends. And that's very relaxing for me.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show, or both?
Well, TV, I like to stay informed. I like Sunday morning. I usually watch Record, Meet the Press, and This Week. So I watch one and record the other and go back just because I want to hear, the different perspective of what's going on in the world today. I think that's important to stay informed. I think my favorite movie, it's kind of a funny one. It's one you probably haven't seen before. It's called Paint Your Wagon.
Oh, sure.
It was a musical. It was funny to watch Lee Marvin and Clint Eastwood, but it told an interesting story of a group of people that are coming from different walks of life that were building a town from back in the gold rush days, and it showed what a group of people motivated could do together. And it's kind of a simple movie, but it's a lot of fun. And I enjoy that era. That's why when I go to the Sierras, I like making my own fire and cooking my own fish and living that way. It's okay.
Hey, simple life is good sometimes, right?
It is, especially when you can stay there for a week and then come back to real life. It's a nice break.
Yeah, I was born under a wandering star. I remember that song.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I'm not sure that's a good thing to admit, mind you, but I remember.
Well, that was Lee Marvin.
Yeah, thanks. Favorite type of music?
I love the Beach Boys. I've been
All
a
right.
big fan of the Beach Boys. I saw a little nostalgia. I saw the Beach Boys for the first time the same day John Kennedy was killed. November 22nd, '63. I was just a young kid, 13 years old, and I was living in Sacramento Valley, and they came to Marysville, and we went and saw them. And when that morning John Kennedy was killed, we thought the concert was off, and it wasn't. They came to motivate us, and they did, and it did. It was a nice evening, and they talked about the president, but they also sang some great songs, and I've been a total fan ever since.
Yeah, no, they're spectacular. Favorite type of food?
I'll eat anything. You put something in front of me, and it disappears pretty quickly. So I love Italian food, but I sushi, you name it. When it comes to food, I'll eat about anything.
Good for someone who travels a lot, then.
So yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Hey, listen, it's a pleasure. I really appreciate your time and your perspectives. Hopefully, I'm sure we'll see you again soon. And again, thanks very much for your time.
Mark, thank you for calling. Have a good day.
You as well.